Thank you so much for being with us, James. Can you tell everybody your full name and how do you help clients?
Oh, my full name. I haven't been asked that for a while. So my full name is James Michael Kenneth Burtt. And before you laugh at the Kenneth part, that was my grandfather's name, apparently. Not that I ever met him. So that's why I've got that horrendous middle name. Shout out to all the other people called Kenneth. And how do I help clients? I'm known as the podcast king here in Europe. So I help people to plan, produce, launch, grow, and monetize their powerful podcast, basically.
Excellent. Now, I heard you in a Clubhouse room. So my next question is, what do you love most about Clubhouse?
I love the fact that Clubhouse right now is a level playing field. There is no sponsored messaging. There's no, there's some algorithm tricks, no doubt, that people can utilize. There's a lot of people buying followers, by the way. Let's talk about that on another episode. But there's some tricks and hacks to sort of get well known. But the main thing that I love about it is that you live or die on that platform by the value that you give. If you're not the message that you preach, you will get caught out on Clubhouse. There's no second take. There's no re-editing it. What you say and you put out into the world in real time is what people will hear. If you are the message that you preach, I think you'll find a tribe of people who could easily become your customers and clients. And if you aren't the message that you preach, you're going to get found out well quick.
Totally agree. Now you almost have 30,000 followers, true followers. So how much time do you spend on Clubhouse?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I'll say a couple of hours a day. You ask my wife, and it's probably 23 hours to 24 hours. No, I'm quite tactical with it. To start with, I was on it like non-stop. But these days, I'm tactical about the rooms that I go into. I have my phone on in the background in a lot of rooms where I'm a moderator, if that makes sense. So active listening, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. Sort of in the background of stuff, probably 3 or 4 hours a day at this point. It depends, because we've got quite a big group called the Winners Club that we run, and we've got other rooms that we are also so we've brought in other people who are almost like in the role of talent. So think of us like the Winners Club is almost like the BBC, and then we have programs within the club, if that makes sense, because we've got a suite of tools and we've worked out some stuff that helps people get better reach and run better rooms, basically. So yeah, 1 to 2 hours actively and probably 3 to 4 hours inactively.
Excellent. Now, how are you able to generate leads for your business by being on Clubhouse?
So again, I think it goes back to the point I mentioned a minute ago about being able to add value. And I actually set myself a challenge, because in January, when I got invited to the platform, I was like, well, this is a waste of time. I actually put out a podcast episode on the 7th of January, which said why Clubhouse is the biggest waste of time in 2021. ... in brackets, maybe. And I'm glad I put that maybe, because I gave myself a bit of wiggle room. But I was spending hours and hours on it. I'm like, well, this is great. I've got a couple of thousand followers and I'm getting loads of engagement on my Instagram, etc. But I hadn't made a penny. This is probably within the first week or the first 10 days. And I set myself a challenge. I said, right, within the next 10 days, I need to make £1,000 sterling via this app. And if I don't make £1,000, then I'm off. That was my challenge to myself. And it had to be directly attributable to Clubhouse. It couldn't be like, oh, my brand value's gone up and such client come back to me. No, it had to be via Clubhouse Direct. So that was the challenge I set to myself within the sort of, 10 days, £1,000, 10 days, 100 quid a day, easily done. So I ended up doing about £5,000 or £6,000 in sales in that 10 days. And I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. So I basically hand-to-hand combat style, go on, add massive value. I chime in when I've got something that I can genuinely be an expert in. I don't get involved in stuff that I know nothing about. I'm actively in the rooms where I can add value. I then tell people, I encourage people to connect to me via Instagram, and then I DM every single person. And I did it manually for the first 3 or 4 months. I DM every single person who connects to me and say, thanks for connecting with me. I'm presuming we'll just talk about podcasting or branding, which are my 2 geek out subjects. So if you need any advice on those subjects, give me a shout, or join my free Facebook community where I give out loads of value about podcasting. And that's how I did it.
Excellent. Now you said you're known as the podcast king. How do you help people if they're just starting out with their podcast?
So, by the way, the podcast king is not a name I gave to myself, because who would want to call themselves the podcast king? That's ridiculous. But a couple of clients of mine called me on LinkedIn, And I was like, that is horrendous. Never call me that again. But I've got 15 years of working with the likes of Nintendo and Xbox and BMW and Nissan. So I was like, if I put my branding hat on, I'm like, actually, whilst it's a terrible nickname, it's actually a really good brand, because your brand is your reputation, nothing more, nothing less. Simple as that. So I was like, well, if I'm getting called the podcast king, then this is quite good. I get brought up into other podcast rooms by other people who offer the same service. You go, oh, James is here. He's the podcast king. Let's bring him up. I'm like, why would you do that? It's your room. But that's how sort of well known I got for that particular sort of skill set. But how I help new podcasters is that for the first 56 days of your podcast going live, the algorithm favors new shows. So some really simple tactics that you need to deploy in order to get the maximum out of your podcast. So you basically need to warm up the audience to it before it launches. You need to launch it on a particular day of the week. There's a strategy around that. You need to launch it at a particular time. There's a strategy around that. You need to be doing episodic marketing. So audiograms, quote graphics, videograms, bespoke URLs, guest URLs, that kind of stuff. That's what will really get a podcast traction. So that's what I help people with, as well as all the basic stuff, you know, what microphone to use, how to talk into a mic, how to get good guests, how to do the editing. So my background is radio. I was in the radio game for the last 15 years. So my background is broadcast. So I kind of take what I knew about broadcast, what I knew about marketing, and put it into podcasting and teach people that, basically.
I love it. Now, on your bio, it said you are a laugh creator. What does that mean?
Do you know what? I just put that on there because everyone at one point, it was so serious. It's like, you know, I 7x my business and I had these returns and, you know, I'm, you know, dominating this space and, you know, I work 18 hours a day and I'm a wonderful husband. I was like, do you know what? I'm just here to have a bit of a laugh as well. If it's not fun, I'm not interested. And I've always been like that in businesses that I run or, you know, companies that I've been involved in. If I'm not enjoying it, then why am I doing it?
Excellent. I love that. Can you tell, like, if someone is just new on the Clubhouse platform, what's one or two things they can do to be successful?
So the first thing you need to be doing is finding ways to get yourself on the stage as soon as possible. Put your hand up when you get given the opportunity, get up on stage and add value. Again, I keep banging on about this thing, but it's really, really important. Add value, add value, add value. Don't sit in the audience for hours and hours and hours in rooms that you're never going to be invited onto the stage of, because bearing in mind, if you're on Clubhouse, unless you're there generally because you're interested in the entertainment or the information, or you just want to absorb, if you just want to be a content absorber, that's absolutely fine. But the majority of us are on there to build our brand, remembering that your brand is your reputation. So be in those rooms where you can add value, stick your hand up, come onto stage. When you're really, really new, when people don't know you, what you want to be able to do is to seed your expertise or your credibility in the way that you ask a question. So the majority of the way that all of us started out, I don't know about yourself, but I was definitely this way. You know, I had no followers to start with, like everybody else did. And you know, someone would ask a question in a room. I was like, well, how does this thing work? Well, I'll put my hand up and see if I can ask a question. But I seeded my expertise. So and you can do that for pretty much anything, but it goes back to being in the right kind of rooms. So for example, let's say that someone's talking about branding and marketing. And I think it probably was one of those rooms where I've sort of put my hand up first. Put my hand up, get invited on stage. Hi, James, what's your question? Oh, amazing panel conversation today. Thank you so much for holding it. Love what's been shared today. I loved what Rob said, and I loved what Mark said about that, and what Charisse had to share about it was phenomenal. I really resonate with that. I've actually been in the branding game for 15 years. I've worked with the likes of Nando's, Thomas Cook, Nissan, all those sort of like big brands. So I've worked with people at the sort of the biggest scale, but also with newbie investors who are getting started. I just find that they don't work on, you know, the essentials of branding, core values, USPs, mission statement, value proposition, which we know from working with the biggest brands is really important. What's your main piece of advice for people who are getting started out? So what I've done there is I've asked my question, but the whole time I've put layers of, here's how much stuff I know, effectively like, here's how clever I am, and this is the stuff that I've done. Think of it that way, because what a lot of people do is go, oh, great conversation. How would a newbie get started? We've added no value to that, and you need to sell yourself, if that makes sense. And from the time when I did that, I then, you know, within 5 minutes of being in any room at any point, I'd get invited onto stage because people knew who I was and what I'd done, if that makes sense. So yeah, that'd be my top tip. Ask great questions, but do it in a way that seeds your expertise.
Excellent. So James, where can people find you online if they want to join your Facebook group or if they want to learn more about podcasting?
So best place to connect with me is Instagram. So at James Burtt, which is 2 T's. So BURTT, James Burtt Official, or you can just Google Ultimate Podcast Group and we pop up on all the platforms there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you in Clubhouse.
Thank you for having me.